just ever since I was little, like I used to be in classical dance, so I've danced for a really long time, and I really liked performing. But I never really thought of becoming like like going into the industry for K-pop and becoming a singer. Rather, I was more into my ballet at the time when I was younger, because I used to live in Canada. That's when I was doing ballet, but my family moved back to Korea, and from there I was still just doing classical dance. But it was a big coincidence because one day I was going home from school, I was walking home, and at the crosswalk there was a lady who approached me, and she gave me like her card, and she was like, "Oh, are you interested in like doing an audition, and like are you interested in this industry?" And at that time I was just like, "Oh wow, like K-pop, that's so cool." Kind of, it wasn't a really like big dream for me. It was more like I just thought it was a cool thing to do.
How old were you when you got that card?
I was 15, I believe. So I was pretty young, and I just thought that, oh, that's really like glamorous, and I thought it'd be cool. So I just went to go to the audition, and I didn't even I never learned how to sing or dance. Like I enjoyed singing and dancing, but I never learned. And so I just went to audition. I didn't know anything, but they liked me. So they said that, oh yeah, I got into the company, and that's kind of how it started. It wasn't really like, I didn't have like much of a plan.
Yeah.
It just kind of happened one day.
They're very different. Like, I don't know because it's not my thing, but ballet and K-pop, I see them at very different ends of a spectrum. But how do you see them? Are they similar? Were like your ballet skills transferable to the dance that you eventually were doing in that? Or how do you picture ballet and K-pop?
Well, in the sense that I know how to move my body and how my body works. In that way, I think it helped me learn to dance, like K-pop dancing. Yes, it was very different because the moves are different. So, but I think that it did help because in K-pop dancing too, like people say that it's like some dancers have like really pretty lines of their body, and like I think the classical training kind of helped in that part.
So imagine you're 15 years old, you've been doing ballet, maybe your parents have, or you have visions of you doing sort of operas and Swan Lakes or things like that in the future, and then you get a card saying, do you want to do K-pop? What's your family or your friends' reaction to this? Because it seems like quite a U-turn or a left turn. Especially getting a card from someone on the street, it's a little bit weird, isn't it?
It was kind of weird, and like stranger danger too, because I don't know who this person is, but the company was like quite a big, like famous company. So I think it's kind of different. Like even if I'm not like that old right now, it's like, it's been a few years now. So at that time, I think it was more common for like people to get casted on the streets. Like I think it was like a common thing to happen. So I don't think I really like thought that person was a threat or anything. I just kind of trusted them. And I was there with my friends too. So they were like, oh, that's so cool. And like, are you going to do it or not? And like, I think at the time, I didn't know I was going to get in or anything. I just thought it would be a cool experience and like a nice story, just to be like, oh, I auditioned for this company. Like, I thought it would be like a fun little experience. But so for my mom too, like, we didn't really think that like too serious of it. We just thought it'd be like, oh, like, try everything, kind of that. It was more of that rather than like, oh, this is like a change in your dreams. I didn't really take it that seriously at first, to be honest.
But when doors open and opportunities present themselves, you have to try to take them sometimes. You have to see where the path leads. Yeah, I applaud your courage, and that's a really cool thing. Now, I'm just curious, like, when you're doing the auditions, I want to kind of know, like, what an audition is. Like I've seen some videos of some other people doing them, but like what your audition was like, and also the other people that might be going into auditions, do they have similar skill sets as you? Like they have a background in, let's say, ballet or classical dance. I guess that your English skills might have also been an asset. I'm not sure if I'm right or wrong in that. Like, how do you see the skills that you had going in, and were they comparable to other people's skills, or is everyone different when they go in?
I think everyone's really different because some people actually have had some more professional training before doing their audition, like they train for their audition, and some people have absolutely no background in singing or dancing. And for me, like you said, I think the English, they really liked that I was able to speak English because at that time, K-pop was slowly becoming more global. So speaking English was very good trait to find in a candidate for them, I believe. So they asked me to introduce myself in English. They videotape the entire audition when you go in. And then for me, they asked me to prepare like one song and one dance. So I did that. It wasn't that great, I don't think.
What did you sing? Are we allowed to ask that?
I sang Take About by Rihanna.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. And then I did like a K-pop dance, and then they wanted to see some of my ballet dancing as well. So they just turned on like a random, I think they turned on like Adele, and they were like, dance ballet to Adele. So I did.
And you obviously smashed it because you got in there. That's great.
Usually, from what I've heard, people would take like auditions like even tens, hundreds of times, and that was my very first one. So I think I got very lucky.
Wow! Yeah, congratulations on that. It's really cool. Is 15 like old? You said some people do like lots of different auditions or lots of professional training. Like if you're coming in at 15 for the first time, is that kind of old, or is that the average age, or do you know anything about that?
At that time when I first got into the company, I think I was at like a very average middle age there. There were people who were older than me, and there were people who were young as 12 years old, I think. So I think I was in the middle.
Okay. And when you're that age, like you're 15 and you're doing these things, were you listening to K-pop at the time? Were you a big fan of K-pop? Did you like you stan any of the groups or anything like that, or were you listening to other things?
I listen to K-pop, and I like to like learn the dances and just do them at home. Even from when I was in Canada, I would like watch like Korean TV shows and like the music shows and listen to a lot of K-pop music. And I was also a fan of somebody, and like a very big fan. I went to concerts. I even went to like a fan sign once.
Wow.
So I was very much into K-pop.
If you do have that dance background, like who are the good dancers? I mean, I think of people like Taemin. Taemin seems to do good stuff with his dancing, and maybe J-Hope. But who do you see as like dancers that you might see and go, wow, that's skill right there?
Everyone's so talented, like even more than before. I think the standards really gone so high. Everyone's amazing.
Yeah.
But I personally really like Lisa. She's an amazing dancer, I think. And yeah, I think it's because I'm a girl. I like to watch like girl dancers. Yeah, and people are so good now.
They really are. Like if you watch old, so I say old, the standard just in singing and dancing, choreography, it's grown so much.
It really has.
Any idea how that happened? Because it's like it went from being a bit kind of, I don't want to say cheesy because it wasn't, but you can just see the skill level has accelerated so fast in the K-pop. What's happening there, do you think?
I think it's because the industry just grew really fast and all of a sudden. So I feel like a lot of more people are getting into the field. So there are more people in general just being in the K-pop field. So there's bound to be more skilled people now than before. And training has become much more professional than it has before. When companies have trainees, they go through a much more challenging training process than in the past.
That's probably a good place to go on to that, because you've said that you spent about 4 years in various companies and 2 years in a really big group. What's the training like? What's the day-to-day stuff like? And do you get to have a life outside? Did you still go to school during this time, or do you have to completely stop that? How does that work?
So I think it's different for every company and like what point in your like debut you are at. So if you're just starting out to train in the company, I think they're a little bit more lenient with your schedule. So at my very first company, I was still in middle school. So I would go to school like normal, and after school ends, I would go to the company and train until about 10 p.m.
Wow.
every day in the weekdays, but the weekends we had off. But in the other companies, I was scheduled to be debut soon. So I would go to school in the morning, and I would just be there for about 2 classes, and then I would leave. I would go early and then go to the company.
What do all your classmates? What do all your classmates say at school? Like, do they look up to you and go, "Wow"? Or how does that work? I mean, school's a very hard. School's a very hard thing when you're a teenager. But if you're going out early after 2 classes to go and try and be a superstar, how does that work? What's school like?
I don't know if it's just what I think, but I was just I don't think anybody really knew what I was doing. Like, I didn't have like a lot of friends or anything, so no one really was like, wow, or no one really said anything. It was just, oh, there she goes. Yeah. And so I would have to like give a note to my teacher, like from the company. They would be like, oh, she has to get out of class after this time because she has to go to this company and train. So at first, like, some of my teachers were they didn't really like it, obviously. But some teachers I had were really supportive about it. So they would make some changes with the attendance and things like that, and they would try to help me out.
From what I've seen of you, I like your humility, I think, because there would be some people like shouting it from the rooftops and, celebrating themselves before they've even achieved it. But you seem to have kept it, kind of on the down low and kept everything grounded, which is a really cool thing, I think, to be able to do. In terms of the training, so you come out of school and then you go training, and it's different at different stages. But when you say training, I have no idea what training is there. So like, what was the training that you were doing? What does it involve?
Well, for every company, vocal lessons and dancing lessons were probably the first thing you would do when you get there. As for dancing lessons, one thing I remember is that as soon as you get there, the first thing you will do is stare at a wall and just practicing body waves while staring at a wall. And that's what everyone starts doing. There's people lined up against the wall and we're all doing the same thing. It's kind of silly, but like, they teach you from like the very basics, because there's a lot of people who haven't had any experience in dancing. And same for vocal training. They would teach you from like how to breathe, and like very basic things.
Is it competitive? So you're doing this training, and we spoke a little bit before we started recording this about the competitive nature of university and society in general, right? But is it competitive when you're doing that? Are you like helping, you're looking out for each other? Some of them have not done any singing or dancing before, so you're supporting them. Or what's that attitude or atmosphere like?
Like, a lot of things in this industry, I think, is so different from every company and everyone else's experience. So, but for me, everyone really just got along well in general. Everyone was very supportive of each other. Like, we would sometimes form groups to do these, what should I say? 평가?
Evaluations?
You're right, evaluations. We'd have like monthly evaluations or like weekly or whatever. And we would sometimes form groups so we could make a performance with the team. So we would work together to do that. So it was important to really be close with the trainees as other trainees as well, to have a good relationship with everybody, because you never know what team you'd be put in, or
that must be quite a difficult thing. I mean, I was just speaking to some people about their military service, and I do hear a lot of similarities. It's not the same, but that not knowing where you're going to be put and the training going through. You now, correct me if I'm wrong here, but you become a rapper, right? That's one of your positions, yeah? Yeah. Okay. I mean, is that right? You were the rapper? How does that get chosen? You've gone from ballet to being like the rap.
I don't know exactly how that happened and why that happened, but I think it's really just like the company's decision. It's like their image of what they think of you and like what they want to portray in the group. So for me, they were like, "Oh, you speak English."
So you rap. Yeah.
I think that was like the correlation they made, but I didn't really understand at first, but I guess I mean, it did kind of like make an image for me, so I'm kind of thankful for that. But at first, I was just really confused, and I was like, am I even capable of doing this? I was questioning myself a lot, but I mean, yeah.
So what did you do? Did you go and start listening to loads of like CL or Missy Elliott or something like that to get it? What happens when you're given that position or that role? Do you have to do rap training then, or you go off and do it by yourself?
I like to listen to like a variety of music, so I did listen to some rap music as well, but I wasn't really like, I never thought that I was going to be doing that. But to be very honest, especially for girl groups in K-pop, I don't think like the like intense rap training is very necessary, because it's mostly just like, it's not very intense. As you would know, it's just very, I don't know how to explain it, but it's very different.
It's kind of where, I mean, I'll show some of my age here, but even going back to like Wonder Girls with Tell Me or Crayon Pop, even those songs had like a 10-second rap break in them. And it wasn't like spitting hard fire, but there was always that position, I think, wasn't there, in the K-pop?
Right. I think there's like a token rap role in every group.
Yeah.
All the companies think that's necessary.
Yeah, but even I'd say we talked about the quality getting better, even the rapping's getting better actually, like from those early days. You've mentioned a couple of times now that you preferred looking at girl groups or women dancers, things like that. Lisa, when you're in that industry, is there a difference that you feel between the girl groups and the boy groups in, I don't know, how they're presented, how they're seen, or how it all works out? Are you separated? Is there a difference between being, let's say, in a girl group and in a boy group?
Well, since I was part of a girl group, and I don't really know exactly what a boy group's experience would have been like, but I do think there are very big differences, because more to do with like our society in general and how just women are viewed in general, not even into K-pop, but just the way the world views women. I think there were kind of some unjust things, or some things that could have made people uncomfortable. If in a girl group, they would be more exposed to some uncomfortable situations that they didn't want to be in.
Without getting too far into this thing, we know about in Korean society, there are sort of different gender roles. There is a lot of objectification and really high standards sometimes are given to women and not to men in terms of lookism and things like that. Is that sort of even more exaggerated in the K-pop thing? Is it just like the same level as society, or is it turned up to 10, or how is it compared to regular society?
I think it really reflects regular society 100%, and even a little bit more, because they're put on a stage and for everyone to look at. They get their pictures taken randomly, and they never know like when they're being like photographed, or videos are getting taken of them. And people really like to take apart every single part of someone's body or face and talk about it. So
it must. Yeah, go on. Sorry.
No. No, it's go on.
Well, I don't know if I'm allowed to ask this question. You don't have to answer it if you don't want. But, while I was doing research, and I know about them anyway, but there's these thing called fan cams, which you must know about. And I saw, there's even ones of you on YouTube with about 1 million views. And it's just you dancing. So, you're a young woman in the industry. And how do you feel when that happens? Is that like you look at it and you go, that's a bit weird, or that's really cool? How do you react to that kind of thing?
For me, most of the time, I like to. I was so grateful for someone to be filming me doing that, because usually when you're in a group, you're just one of 9, 10, maybe more people. But in those videos, you could really, it's focused on yourself, and like sometimes I like to look at it and kind of like reevaluate myself too, and be like, oh, maybe I should like improve here and there. But there are some times where I think I don't know if it's like intentional or not, but sometimes the angles are kind of weird, and like they're kind of like objectifying you in a way, and like even like for YouTube, like if the thumbnails are kind of clickbait, right?
Yeah.
So you could tell that sometimes they would purposely use a certain scene and use that as a thumbnail, or some videos, not even me, like for everyone else too, like some videos are taken at very odd angles that would they're not that great.
But it is interesting, and I do understand that there is a good side, especially if you're a dancer and you do want a bit of attention, you want to evaluate yourself, see what you're doing, and you're standing out amongst those 9-10 members. That's a good thing, but then, yeah, there might be that flip side to it. From that, Jungahn, what's it like with fans? So every group, I guess, has their different level of fandom, and they do different things. And I think fandom is changing with social media, right, as it goes on. But what's it like interacting with fans? And are you given like advice on how you should be treating fans, or what you should be saying to them? What's the relationship between a fan and a K-pop star from the K-pop star's position?
I think the fan interaction has changed even more than when I was in the industry, because now there are just so many like fan interaction apps where you can actually like talk to the K-pop idol like through a like IM kind of way, like messaging kind of way. It's very much more intimate than what I remembered, because the furthest I got was to like Instagram maybe. So I think it's become much more intimate, and K-pop idols could have much more close relationships with their fans, which I think is good in a way. But also, my question is, how far does this go? Like, how far? Where do they draw the line? Because sometimes it could be kind of an invasion of privacy, or for the fans to know every single little bit of their K-pop idol's life.
Did you find much of that? Did you find like you wanting to protect your privacy even more? Did you sort of retreat, or how did you handle that? Because it is kind of weird that if you Google yourself, or you would go on, the internet, and you might see your name and rumors or things coming up, which happens as part of the industry. How do you handle that at such a young age?
Well, a lot of people just say, like, if you're going into this industry, I mean, it's kind of a given, and that you should just accept it and know that it's going to happen. So I think that was how I thought of it a lot in the time when I was in it. But now that I think of it right now, it's just when I'm not in like a K-pop group or whatever, but everything that I've done is still on the internet, and it's just there for everyone to see. It is kind of, sometimes I wish that, maybe there's like a way to like delete myself from the internet. But I know that's not possible. So, I mean, now I'm fine with it. But yeah, it's kind of overwhelming at times that there's the things that maybe sometimes I don't want for people to see on the internet, or rumors, like you said. But I don't know. I didn't really have it like the worst, so I don't think I had like the worst experience, but I just learned to ignore it, I guess. It's it didn't really get to me. So it didn't really get to me. I didn't really have a hard time with that kind of thing.
That's it's good that you've come to terms with it, because it must be very hard. We spoke a little bit briefly about physical training, like dancing and things like that. Is there any mental health training or social media? I know that's becoming a bigger issue more recently, especially in certain industries, and mental health in Korea is quite taboo anyway, right? But was there any attention to that side of things, like how to handle it? Did you get any, or do some companies or people get training in that way, or were you just left to your devices?
For my experience, I didn't really get any like training for my mentality or anything. They did do like a few group sessions where we would like talk to each other with a person who came in, like who was a professional. But for me, I just felt like it was kind of a show. Like it wasn't really real. I just felt like they were just doing it to be like, oh, we did care for your mental health or whatever. But
tick a box.
I think it really would have helped if there was more attention for people's mental health, because it's like, I feel like it's really crucial for this industry because there's so many young people and they're just all put together, and they're bound to like be some problems here and there. So I think that if more attention is given to the mental health of all the trainees, I think it would make a better environment in general. Right now, like you said, it's getting much better from what I know. People are getting more attention for their mental health, and even K-pop idols who are already promoting actively, they sometimes take a break for their mental health. And I think that's a really good thing that's happening because it wasn't like that before.
No, and even in society in general, it wasn't. It seems to be a new change, which is, I agree with you, completely positive. Let's hope there's more of it. As well as the mental training, I guess there's kind of diet and beauty restrictions. Like, how is this? So I know this is a complete shift from the mental side, but how was it in terms of like your diet, your appearance? Was that micromanaged, or were you just sort of left to yourself to take care of yourself and they just said be healthy, or was it more detailed than that? How did that work?
The intensity of like the diet and weight managing also changes by company and also the stage of where you're in the company. But when you're getting like really close to debut, or you're in that stage where you really have to like get ready to get your picture taken one day or like film a music video, they would I would weigh myself twice a day, in the morning and in the evening. And I would have to take a picture of the scale and send it to the company to be like, oh, this is how much I weigh today. But which was really, really, really bad now that I think about it, because how would a person's weight even change like that drastically through one day, or even just like 12 hours? I don't think that would have been of any help. And it really wasn't, because I was very stressed, and everyone would try to like find out ways to somehow lose weight in one day or a few hours. That's just not how the body works.
You've mentioned, that it must be incredibly stressful because, like you say, you can't change your weight in a healthy way in 12 hours or in a couple of hours. It doesn't work like that. You've mentioned a couple of times now this idea of approaching debut or coming to debut. I can kind of get what you mean, but obviously having not been inside, like, how does that feel? What's that like? Because I don't really know what you mean by this. I can kind of get it. I'm not as stupid, but coming to debut or approaching that stage, what is that stage, Jungahn?
So the company would probably have like a plan to debut a group soon, and they would kind of just look at all the trainees and kind of put them together to see who would work, or like who they think is ready, or who they think would suit this particular concept that they're going for. So they would kind of pick and choose the members that they would need in this group that they're thinking of. So it's different for every company, but for some companies, they would really just one random day, they'd bring all the people that they need for that group, and they'd be like, oh, you're going to be in a group now. And it's just like a big announcement. So that's when the training in general kind of changes to a more intense level.
So you get actually put into a group, or then it starts, you go to a specific thing. When you say they, and again, this is going to change from every company experience, but who is they? I don't mean their specific names, but when you say they make an announcement, they put you in a group, what kind of person is this? Is it a young person? Is it an old person? Is it a man, a woman? Is it an artist? Or what kind of people are doing this?
They're in like a team. The team would be called 신인 개발, like developing new trainees, kind of.
Yeah.
Like there's a team for that. So they would be the ones that are managing you for your training, for the weight kind of things. Like you would be with them every single day. You would be talking to them. They would be managing your schedules and like how your training is going on. They're the people who are working the closest with you when you're in the company as a trainee.
And are they kind of like people? Are they like managers in the sense that they're business people, or they're other dancers? They're much older than you. They're kind of on your level. What kind of people are they?
They're not like they're not the ones who teach. So they don't teach like the dance or vocal lessons, and they're just members of like a company, like a person who works at a company.
Okay. What we're talking about here is like, I'm trying to understand, the difference between being inside the K-pop and seeing it from the outside. Now you have the experience of both. So are there any things that like people get wrong or people miss, you know, because everybody talks, so many people talk about K-pop and the K-pop industry without having been inside it. Is there a big difference between the perception and the reality? Are there things that people generally misconstrue or get wrong? Or
we usually think that like, oh, people think that it's all just glamorous and everything's just great if you're a K-pop idol or whatever, and then people would say, oh, but there's actually like a pretty dark side to it, and everyone has like a hard time with their mental health or whatever. But now I think it's kind of different because people kind of know that already. So people agree that there's hardships for K-pop idols as well, not just all the glitz and glam. But I think it's a positive thing that people understand that they are also people. Celebrities are people as well, and they're just the same as everyone else. So I think that's a good change in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it reflects society as well a bit. You know, Korean society has to change so quickly, and seems to be doing that. Not fast enough for some people, but it seems to be doing that. I agree with you. It's a really good change. Now, you did your debut, and like you're part of a song Boom Boom, like with Momoland, and like I know this song, like I've heard it many times. It gets like 600 million views on YouTube. You're at the front when they're all dancing as the video starts. Like, how does this feel? You must feel on top of the world, or like something like this happens. What's the feeling like then?
Well, that was in 2018, I believe, and it was kind of like we didn't really get as much attention before that, and then it was a big thing at the time. But for me, I didn't really realize it at that time because I was just so busy that I couldn't think about anything else, and I was just kind of low on sleep in general, and they were just like, go here, do this, do that. So I felt like I was like a robot, just going and doing all these stages or whatever. But I didn't really get the time to like realize what was actually happening. So it was, now that if I think about it, it's just a blur. It was just really hectic, and yeah, as I said before, I was just really low on sleep in general, so I don't remember a lot. But now that I think of it, it's unreal. It's like a dream, and it really feels like a dream because, as I said before, it's kind of a blur.
Yeah.
It really feels like a dream now, and I was really grateful too. But I think I was just so caught up in the schedule and everything that I didn't really get to get the time to actually like take a look at what was happening to myself.
On a roller coaster, and you only realize it when you get off and look back.
Right.
What was the big change? So you have, you know, at first you start with Welcome to Momoland, Wonderful Love and things like that, but then it's Boom Boom that really seems to change. Do you have any idea what changes that, or was it a gradual progression, always going that way? Was it a big jump?
I think for my case, I think it was like a really big jump, and everything just happened so suddenly that I didn't really know what was going on, and like there were more things that I had to do after that because we got more busy, and we had more places to go and things to do. So it was a really big change, but for most of the part, I was just really grateful because I never even imagined that I would be doing these things. I would be performing at like different countries, and I think I really enjoyed that part of the experience because I didn't really get to travel before because I was training for a long time. So I thought it was really fun. That was one of my favorite things, to like meet people like all over the world. And
I know you said it was all a bit like a dream and it was a blur, but is there anywhere that sticks out? Because this is what I wanted to ask you next. Like, what kind of stages or performances, gigs were you doing? Is there anything that you did and you're like, wow, I'm here on this stage in this place, in this city, or in this country, or in this venue in Korea? Is there anything that sticks out as being like, wow?
We particularly had more like fame and more popularity in the Philippines. So we went there a few times to perform, and there were so many people, even from the airport. And it was really overwhelming. And I was just really grateful because I would never imagine like all these people are just came here to see us, and that was like a dream. And like the people would take time out of their day to come and see us. I think that's just like a really big thing, like that people would make time out of their way to come and see us perform. And it was just, I was really grateful.
Yeah, that must be super cool to know that they're there out of love, out of support. You know, they're not there for online internet things, but they're there to try to get a glimpse of you, to try to see you and support you. That's a really cool thing. Now, you mentioned it was in the Philippines. I've always found it fascinating that there's a lot of attention focused on K-pop success in the West. Right. So if for example Rose's new single gets to number 48 in the UK charts, that will make the news in Korea. But success in, let's say, the Philippines or Thailand doesn't seem to be as popular. But the love of K-pop in that part of the world is really real, isn't it?
It is.
Any thoughts on that? Like that the love and the support that comes from whether it's Southeast Asia, Indonesia, Philippines, or those places. Any insight into that?
I never really thought about it, but now that you bring it up, I do kind of think that it's weird that when K-pop stars become more recognized, like in the West, it's a really big issue when that's already been happening for so long in like other Asian countries or elsewhere. But I think that just kind of reflects how this country in general just views the West, and I think that has a big relation to that, because. Yeah, I think it's kind of a sensitive topic. I don't know. I don't speak for all Koreans, but I think that's kind of how it's viewed. So I think achievement made in the West would be a much bigger deal for people.
Eventually, you decide that you're going to leave the K-pop industry, right? And you whether it's for good or we're not sure, but how does that come about? Because that's a pretty big decision, considering the success that you are having. And what's it like to walk away from that? I know there's difficult things involved, but what's it like to leave all that behind? Was it therapeutic? Was it this great release? Was it kind of a difficult decision?
Well, for me, leaving this industry, it wasn't like 100% intentional, but there were like a bunch of other things that caused that to happen. But for me, I felt like my mental health was getting really in a bad state. So I didn't think it was worth it for my mental health to be, I thought it would be better for me to just step away from it rather than giving myself a hard time. I thought that would be better. Like it wasn't worth it. I said that to myself a lot. I was like, it's not worth it for this, like for me to feel this way.
How do you, this might be too personal, how do you know that your mental, but it might help other people? How do you know when your mental health is not good? Because sometimes it's hard to recognize things. Like sometimes if we're gaining weight or something, we don't see it in ourselves. It takes other people. How were you able to realize that your mental health was not where it should be?
I just felt like I was a different person. Like I myself changed so much from like when I was first there. And at one point I just felt like I was a complete different person. Like I didn't know who I was, and I didn't like that about myself. I thought like I wanted to go back kind of to like how I was before. And it was hard for me to realize that, but I just became like a really negative person in general, because I was having like, there were so many things going on that were giving me a hard time. Like right now, after just like a good 2 years have gone by, I really do not regret my choice, and I feel a lot better about myself too. And yeah, I'm just overall much happier where I am right now.
Yeah, that's great that you were able to make changes that benefit yourself in a mental and physical way. Now you're studying at university, like you're doing that, which is a great thing. And how is that? How is it to go into, because you know, university in Korea can be a very competitive thing. It's online now. It's all COVID at the moment, so it's a bit different. But what's it like going into university and going from being Daisy, right, and then going to university and just being Jungahn and having hubes and sombes? What's that change like?
My decision to go to university was really difficult to make because as I said before, I didn't go to school properly. Like I would leave in the middle of class, so I didn't really get like my whole high school education experience. So when I got into university, I would take the 수능 test 수능 exam to get in university, and I hadn't held a pencil in like 5 years, so I didn't like remember how to study or do anything. But it just came to me that I think like at this point in my life, the best choice for me to make would be to go to university and study more, because I kind of felt like I was missing out on that, and I missed it kind of. I never thought I would, but I missed it, studying and like learning in general, because I didn't really get to do a lot of that, especially in high school when most of the learning happens is in high school. I didn't really get to experience that. So that's kind of the biggest reason why I decided to go to university. And I had a really hard time for that year when I was studying for the 수능 exam.
How did you do it? I mean, sunung's hard even if you're studying for like 5 years every day. Sunung's really hard. Like, how did you?
So it was just like one day I decided I'm going to do it. I'm going to go to university. So you mostly just did the studying process by myself. Like I would watch the like internet 인강. I would watch classes on the internet, and I would just study by myself. And at the beginning, for about 3 months, it was therapeutic, because I hadn't been studying for so long that it was actually kind of fun. Like I didn't know studying could be fun, but since I hadn't done it in a long time, it was like kind of nostalgic in a way. And also I just felt good about myself because I was actually being productive. But obviously it got kind of like difficult during the year, because studying isn't an easy thing, obviously. And it's a really tedious thing to do. Even also because 수능 is just studying for like one particular thing just for the entire year.
Yeah, and to do it all on one day, that's a whole different topic in itself, isn't it? The 수능 thing. It's crazy to think about. Now you're at university and you're doing that, and congratulations. It's a really cool thing. And even the seniors at university don't want this question, but what do you do next? You probably haven't even thought about it. You're like, well, I'm just taking it day by day. But do you study and then travel, or get a job, or do you go back to ballet? Do you look to do something creative? Have you looked ahead at all?
You're right. I actually don't know. I don't know at all what I'm gonna do, and I don't really have much plan, because for me, like, this was a really big step in itself. So right now I'm still kind of testing the waters for university too, because it's just my first year, and also with COVID, I don't think I really even got any university experience. I'm just kind of sitting behind a screen most of the time. As for ballet, like I always had a thing for it, and I really loved when I was dancing. So like right now I'm still learning it as a hobby and just for fun, to like relieve stress. And in terms of like kind of this K-pop kind of industry, I don't know if I'm gonna like 100% go back to what I was doing before, but I feel like I still kind of have a name for myself, and there may be a few, but there's just some people that are waiting for me, and that are just like, oh, where did she go? And I think that if I get the chance to, I would still like to kind of show my face here and there sometimes and do some small things, maybe YouTube, things like that.
Or do some big things. Yeah, it's great that you still have that possibility. I find it fascinating to hear that you still do ballet as a hobby. Like even before all this started, you were doing ballet, and you still have that there. That's very cool. What are you listening to these days? I know it's a kind of weird thing, but you've been in the music industry and you must be around it all the time. I'm just wondering, is it like that thing that if you worked at McDonald's, you would never eat McDonald's? It puts you off. What kind of music are you listening to these days?
It is kind of like the McDonald's thing. I don't really listen to K-pop anymore. Maybe just like when I'm just going down the streets and I hear some songs and I'd be like, oh, that's, oh, someone released a new song.
Mm.
But then like I wouldn't really like go and look for it or anything. I just listen to more like American artists right now. Mm-hmm.
So who's on your playlist? Are we allowed to know?
Doja Cat.
Yeah.
100% Doja Cat. I love her.
Excellent. So what do you, I mean, you've spoken about some people waiting for you, and you might come back, and I wonder if there might be some other people that might one day listen to this and think about, you know, going through the K-pop experience themselves. Any advice to anybody that's thinking about doing the K-pop thing, or pursuing that path? Have you learned anything? I know you're still quite young yourself, but have you learned anything, or any message that you give to the people coming next?
It would be great if I could be like, oh, it's gonna be a good time and everything's gonna go well. Like, I would love to say that, but that's just not the truth. And I just really want to say that you really have to brace yourself, and that it's not easy, and there will be so many things that are going to bring you down. You're going to have a hard time, but during those hardships, you have to find the little things that bring you joy. For me, it was for like meeting fans and supporters, meeting people, that really helped. But I think it goes for everything, not even just K-pop, but everything's hard and everything has its ups and downs. But you just really have to look for the small little things that can bring you joy and that make it all like doable.
That's that Sohwa Keng that got really popular, I think, a few years ago. So we'll just imagine this then. Imagine there's this company called JA Entertainment, right? And you're the CEO. What does your company do differently? So you've said that, you know, other people should be prepared for what comes, but to find the joys and the pleasures in there somewhere. If you had JA Entertainment, right, Jungahn Entertainment, what would be done differently in that?
Well, because I'm obviously I don't have a company myself, but
just imagine. I know you're creative.
Yeah. I mean, it probably sounds like it wouldn't make any sense in real life, but because it's a business and businesses run on money, it's really important to not treat the artists or whoever as something that they sell. I think that's kind of a big thing, like, because they're all people too. So they have emotions, their mental health is important, but I think that's really neglected sometimes, because most of the time the artists are seen as products and they're trying to sell them to be more marketable. So I think I would really focus on that, because that's the part that kind of was hard for me in my experience, that I felt like I wasn't really being treated like a human sometimes.
Yeah, that's a very sad thing, and it doesn't matter what industry we're in. We're all human beings with fears and hopes and dreams and all these kind of things. How does creativity work with that? So I know I'm jumping to a different question here, but you know, sometimes if I think of artists and it's different in K-pop, I guess that's why I'm asking you, but you know, if you're a talented artist, then you can kind of do what you want, right? And in the record company say, well, we don't need, but the record company needs the talented artist, because they can do things, they can write songs, they can make beats, they can produce things that nobody else could do. How does creativity work? Do you wish that artists had more creative control, or do they have some creative control? What's that process like?
This is also different for everyone, but for me, we didn't really have much creative space, because the company would have like a whole plan, and they would have everything in mind already. So everything was mostly just handed to you, like, oh, this is the song that you will do, this is the choreo that you will do, this is how the album is going to look, this is what pictures are going to be taken, this is what you're going to wear, and everything would just be handed to you, and we wouldn't really have a say in like what we wanted to do personally. So I would say that there wasn't much creative space for me, but I think it's different for everyone. And some people, they do songwrite or maybe sometimes like design their album or like be in the process for making the album. So I think that's really cool, and it would have been more fun for me when if I was doing that too. But I mean, if the company has like a plan and that they know it's going to work, like, in a way, I think going with that would also be a good idea.
I think, yeah, then it would make people not feel as much like products. That creative control, that's the second thing you should do in JA, entertainment maybe. Treat them like humans and creative control. You just mentioned very briefly this idea that they would come in with the songs or the concept and the albums and things like that. I saw one of the members of Nine Muses that, you know, very uncomfortable with the concepts that were given to her and things like that. Do you see... Are concepts getting better? You know, we started off the conversation a bit like this with objectification and things like that. Are concepts getting better? Are they become more empowering? Are they more diverse? Any thoughts on the concepts inside K-pop?
I think like K-pop and just Korea in general is really run on trends. So I think right now the trend for the concepts of girl groups is becoming very similar. It's definitely become better in the way that they're less objectified, and I think that the girl groups look way more confident and like independent now than before, which I think is a good thing. I enjoy those concepts way more than the concepts that were common in the past.
I agree with that. I see that. It seems to be sort of less about the super sexy concept, but more confident and strong. In terms of, I guess, cross-culture, and you said you spent some time in Canada and things like that, is K-pop changing in terms of its cultural awareness of other cultures? This seems to be a big topic online, I think, more than in Korea. But there's often talk online, on social media, about cultural appropriation in K-pop and hairstyles, and sometimes even blackface that goes on in K-pop. You know, there's this cross-cultural communication that happens. That seems to be getting better, do you think? How do you perceive these changes going like that?
I think as K-pop's audience is becoming more global and there's just more people coming in contact with K-pop, they're bound to be more of those problems with like cultural appropriation and these things. But I feel like maybe K-pop wasn't ready for that at like, because it happened all so fast, and it was just all of a sudden it became so big. I think that there needed to be like a stepping stone in the middle where there could be like more people could become more aware about different cultures and how people would things would make certain things could make people uncomfortable. But I think that was kind of neglected, and they just kind of ran with what they were going, and then now it's becoming an issue because they didn't pay attention to it when they should have paid attention. Like offending different cultures and different people, it wasn't intentional. It just, I felt like I don't think anyone would purposely just, oh, let's just do this to make these people feel bad. Right. I think it was just more of an ignorant problem.
No, I completely agree with you. It wasn't done out of malice or evil thought. It's just different cultures are at different times and they have different values, and it's that communication between them, isn't it? I think that takes place. Yeah. You've taught me so much.